Hi everybody. I hope that you're all doing fine and I hope that you're also ready for the lesson today. So first off, what you need to do is just scroll down to the login. So you log in with the aplusstudent.com, and after that you just put on your email and your password to log in, but I'm just going to share my screen to show you all. Okay, so first off, you log in using the aplusstudent.com, and after logging in, you put your email and your password, and then next you go to where you have your name. So you click on your name, and then yeah, these are the names here. So you just click on the names, and then you click on the grade that you're working on. So we're working on grade 9 today. So yeah, which is language arts. Yeah. Okay, so we'll scroll down to grade 9. Oh, sorry, that was grade 12. So we'll just go to grade 9, log in, and then you click on your chapter, then the lesson. Okay, so we're having the chapter simple compound complex and compound complex sentences. This is it here. And we have two lessons from the simple compound complex and compound complex sentences. We have two lessons here. And yeah, we'll try to complete both of them. So we'll just start from the first part. Okay, so yeah. Okay, so first of all, the lesson that we're going to go through is the identify dependent and independent clauses. So we have dependent and independent clauses, and we need to be able to identify them in a sentence. Okay, so if you're not able to identify them, then there could be like little problems and all that in your sentences. So yeah. Okay. So, first of all, we have a clause. We need to know what a clause is to be able to go for the independent and dependent clause, right? So, what is a clause? A clause is a group of words that contain both a subject and a predicate. So, one thing you need to take note of is that a clause contains a subject and a predicate. Okay, so another clause then we have the independent clause and then the dependent clause. So first of all, the an independent clause is a complete thought. Okay, so you need to note that the independent clause is a complete thought. That means the sentence is complete and it does make sense, and then it can stand alone as as a sentence. Okay, so the independent clause is a complete thought. It can also stand alone as a sentence. But a dependent clause is not a complete thought. It cannot stand alone as a sentence. So independent stands alone as a sentence. Dependent clause does not stand alone as a sentence because it is not a complete thought. Okay, so the dependent clause is not a complete thought. It does not stand alone. Okay, so yeah, we have some examples. Let's pick up some sandwiches from Pet's Cafe. So let's pick up some sandwiches from Pet's Cafe. The clause can stand alone, it is independent. Okay, so when you say let's pick up some sandwiches from Pet's Cafe, it makes sense because it's an independent clause and in the sentence forms a complete thought, so it stands alone and it's good. And then when you say after Kelvin gets off work. So it is dependent because the clause cannot stand alone. When you say after Kelvin gets off work, what happens after Kelvin gets off work? We have no idea what happens after Kelvin gets off work, right? So when you say after Kelvin gets off work, does it make sense? Okay, so yeah, apparently something is missing in the sentence and it cannot stand alone as a complete thought. So after Kelvin gets off work doesn't make sense, cannot stand alone. So yeah, you need to look into that carefully first to be able to identify the dependent and the independent clauses. All right, so next one we need to note is like the complex sentence. So first off, what is a complex sentence? A complex sentence is made up of an independent clause and a dependent clause. Okay, so the complex sentences. So when you want to like have a complex sentence, write complex sentences, they are made up of independent clause and dependent clauses. The dependent clause is a complete sentence, usually begins with a subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun. So now, the dependent clause in a complex sentence usually begins with a subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun. Now, subordinating conjunction includes, these are the examples of the subordinating conjunction, so you can do well to also write them down so that you always remember them. And we also have like the relative pronouns. So, subordinating conjunctions include after, although, as, because, before, if, since, unless, until, when, and while. Okay, so these are examples of the subordinating conjunctions. I'm just gonna highlight them. Okay, so these are the subordinating conjunctions. And then the next off is the relative pronouns. So we have relative pronouns also because, like I said, the dependent clause is a complex sentence, usually begins with subordinating conjunction or relative pronoun. So examples of the relative pronouns are that, which, who, whom, or whose. So the relative pronouns include that, which, who, whom, or whose. So these are the relative pronouns just under here. So yeah, that's it. And then let's pick up some sandwiches from Pet's Cafe after Kelvin gets off work. So if you note that from the beginning up here, we had after Kelvin gets off work as the dependent clause. Okay? Now, if you want to make it an independent clause or if you want to like make it like a complete sentence now, you can use a subordinating conjunction to attach them. So it says that subordinating conjunction comes at the beginning of a dependent clause. So we have a dependent clause of Kelvin gets off work. So you see the after here, this after here is a subordinating conjunction. So it begins with it. So take note that when you have a dependent clause, subordinating conjunction always comes before the dependent clause. So it could be if, because, although, after, anything. It could be that one. Okay, so let's pick up some sandwiches from Pet's Cafe after Kelvin gets off work. So subordinating conjunction. And then if you want to have the relative pronoun. During his trip to Italy, Tony visited the Trevi Fountain, which is in Rome. Which, so which, this is the relative pronoun, so you can also take note of them. So now, this also the dependent clause is in Rome. So we have which in between the main sentence and then the dependent clause. So which comes, yeah, which comes before that. Okay, so take note that when you have like a dependent clause in a complex sentence, they usually begin with either the subordinating conjunction or they begin with the relative pronouns. Okay, now we have a question here. Now it says that since Japan has little arable land, it cannot grow enough crops for its population and must import much of its food. So since Japan has little arable land, it cannot grow enough crops for its population and must import much of its food. Okay, so you have to select the dependent clause. So now, if you're selecting the dependent clause from this sentence, which is the beginning of the dependent clause? So now, when you want to select that, you have to look at it. So since is an example of subordinating conjunction. So we have since, and the sentence starts with since Japan has little arable land. So now it's gonna be this part. So since Japan has little arable land is a dependent clause. It begins with a subordinating conjunction since. Okay? So that's literally it. When you're asked to like figure out the dependent clause, you have to check like the subordinating conjunctions, the relative pronoun. Do they have subordinating conjunctions or relative pronoun? So if they have that, then that's perfect. Okay? So yeah. Let's see. Now we have some examples. It says that select the dependent clause. While the telephone connected 50 million people within 75 years of its intercession, the internet accomplished the same feat in only 4 years. So now, while the telephone connected 50 million people within the 75 years of its inception, the internet accomplished the same feat in only 4 years. So now, which is a dependent clause here? So now, when we look at it, it starts with while, okay, and then what is gonna be the while? Now, while part of the is while part of the dependent clause. Yeah, you have to check. So yeah, while is part of the subordinating conjunction. So it starts from while the telephone connected 50 million people within 75 years of its inception. So this is the beginning. This part here from while is the dependent clause. Okay? So now, as long as you see the subordinating conjunction or you see like the relative pronouns, then that's the beginning of the dependent clause. And the dependent clause always starts with either the subordinating conjunction or it starts with the the relative pronoun. Okay? So, yeah, that's it. All right, so let's check some more examples before we go to the test. So now this okay, let's check another example. We have the next here. Oh, sorry. All right, so frozen foods. Okay, it says that you should select the dependent clause. Select the dependent clause. Frozen foods may lose water molecules and become dehydrated unless they are wrapped tightly. Frozen foods may lose water molecules and become dehydrated unless they are wrapped tightly. Now, you need to find the dependent clause. So where does it begin from? You have to check what is it. We have unless in the sentence. So unless is the beginning of the dependent clause. Wherever you see that the beginning of the wherever you see the subordinating conjunction or the relative pronoun, that is the beginning of the dependent clause. So yeah, we have unless. So you see this one down here. So unless they are wrapped tightly, that's the beginning of the dependent clause. Okay. Since Mr. Dorsey had been sick all week and may still have been contagious, he stayed home from his family reunion on Saturday. So where's the beginning of the subordinating conjunction? We have the beginning from since. So since Mr. Dorsey has been sick, yeah, so that's it from scenes. And then this one says the uniquely colorful many Dome St. Basil Cathedral in Moscow might have been destroyed if architect and preservationist Patry Paradovsky had not first Stalin planned for its demolition. No, where is it starting from? The if. So if the architect, preservationist. Okay, so from the architect if, because we have if here as the word dependent clause. Okay. So that's basically it. That's basically it for the dependent clause, how to find them. All you need to do is just take note of the subordinating conjunctions. If you write them down, then it's going to be easy for you to be able to figure out the dependent clauses in the questions. So we'll go to the test and answer some few together. Now, select the dependent clause. We have 30 questions. We'll do a few together and then I'll let you finish up. So it says since Japan has little arable land, it cannot grow enough crops for its population and must import much of its food. So let's say we just click on any one. Yeah. So clicking on anyone, that's because maybe you do not know the answer or you're confused if it is part of the dependent clause. So all you need to do is just scroll down. Okay. So once you pick something and your answer ends up wrong, you scroll down and then you can read the tutorials again to kind of like understand it carefully. So once you scroll down, you're gonna see the explanation again, and all you need to do is just read it. Okay, so if you get it wrong, just scroll down, go through the tutorials again before you move on to the next question so that you're certain and you don't make the same mistake. So it is not part of the subordinating conjunction, but since should be the beginning of the answer. Now, each year, around 2.5 million people visit the ruins of Popil, which was destroyed by the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 74 AD. Okay, so investors visa. So which part of it has the coordinating conjunction or the relative pronoun? So note that it's not only coordinating conjunction we have also relative pronoun, and I don't see each is not part of the subordinating conjunction, but we have the which here, which is the relative pronoun. So which was destroyed by the eruption. So this should be the answer. Now, dependent clause. While the telephone connected 50 million people within 75 years of its inception, the internet accomplished the same feat in only 4 years. So, yeah. Now, which part has the beginning of the subordinating conjunction or the relative pronoun? So we have the part that says while. So while is actually part of the subordinating conjunction. So yeah, it's gonna begin from while. So so yeah, I clicked on the wrong answer. I think that I thought that I clicked on the second, but apparently I clicked on the first one. So that was why it's wrong. But while is the subordinating conjunction, so it starts from while. Okay, not from the internet. The internet is not part of it. They is not part of subordinating or relative pronoun. It's just from while. So yeah, that's why that one is wrong. Okay, so moving on. Vicky sat restlessly in the car while she waited for the heater to defrost the windshield. Okay, so while again, because while is the subordinating conjunction. So yeah, so while. Now we have this one. Okay, So, between the 1860 and 1861, 11 states formally seceded from the United States of America and formed an independent nation, which they named the Confederate States of America. So, now is it between or which? Is between a subordinating conjunction. You see, now you have questions that might come in and it might be a little bit confusing, just like the between and the which now. So you ask yourself, is between part of the subordinating conjunction or is it which? So you just click and then yeah, which is part but between is not part. So you might see between and it might look like, oh okay, it's part of the subordinating conjunction, but no, it's not. So while a stray cat is usually defined as a lost or abandoned pet, a feral cat lives in the wild and avoids human contact. So is it gonna start from a feral cat or wild? So it's starting from wild, a stray cat. So stray cat. Oh, I'm so sorry. I just keep clicking on the wrong thing. So yeah, I clicked on it again. So you see this part has the wild. It starts from the wild, right? So yeah, so that's it. So we just scroll down again to see why it's correct or if it's not correct. Okay. So now, okay. And one thing you need to note is that they could ask you for independent and dependent clauses. One mistake that you could make is to not read the question. So I just realized that this question was asking for independent clause. So I didn't take note of that. Okay, so that's why, and I picked the dependent clause. So the dependent clause is wrong, but the independent clause is correct. So that's it. Remember that independent clause can stand on its own. So all you need to do is just separate it, and then a feral cat lives in the wild and avoids human contact. It makes sense. Okay? So yeah. You have to make sure you read the question carefully. I think this has happened twice. I thought I was dependent, but then I just let it go. So yeah. Now this is the dependent clause here. So it's this one. So yeah. Now I'm trying to find like anyone that has the independent clause so that we can check that together. So most of the questions are just asking for dependent clauses. So yeah. This one is the question we've answered. Okay, perfect. This is the last question I'm going to answer with you guys, and then I'll let you guys finish up your test. So now it says that select the independent clause. The expertise of entomologists is critical to agriculture since insects can damage or completely destroy crops. So now you have to look at the two parts highlighted in green. If I separate this one, is it gonna stand on its own? Is it gonna make sense? Does it begin with any subordinating conjunction or relative pronoun? So yeah, you have to check. So it says that insects can damage or completely destroy crops. The expertise of entomologists is critical to agriculture. So now, which of this is gonna be the right answer? Because we are looking for independent clause. So remember that independent clause, the sentences stand on their own and they make sense. They form a complete thought. So if you are to pick one, which of the answers are you gonna choose? So now you have to choose one of the answers because it starts on its own, it makes sense, and there's no mistake. So let's look at it. Insects can damage or completely destroy crops. So if you're not sure of any one, you cannot figure out any answer. So you just click on this one. Okay. So you see that insects can damage because insect can damage or completely destroy crops. It's wrong because if you look at the beginning of this, it has the since. And since, even though since was not highlighted, since is already there. So apparently it's a dependent clause. Okay, because it starts with a subordinating conjunction. But the expertise of entomologists is critical to agriculture. That is a good sentence. It's independent and can stand on its own. So that's it. So I hope that you take note of all of this, and I hope that you can be able to figure out. So it shows 20% because I'm not done. When I'm done with the test, it's gonna be completed. So you need to finish up your test. Okay, finish up the test, and it's gonna show you completed. All right, so we'll move to the last lesson for this chapter. It says, is the sentence simple, compound, complex, or compound complex? So, yeah. Okay, so um, a clause is a group of words that contains both a subject and a predicate. So we said this in the last lesson. So you know what a clause is. It contains both a subject and a predicate. And an independent clause is a complete thought that can stand alone as a sentence. So independent clause can stand alone as a sentence. A dependent clause is not complete thought. It's not a complete thought and cannot stand alone. So dependent, it's not complete and it cannot stand alone. But independent is complete and it can stand alone. So the oranges on our tree are ripe. The oranges on our tree are ripe. It is independent because the oranges, it makes us, it's a complete sentence. Then after we pick up Kelvin from work, it is dependent. Okay, so now we need to take note of the clauses. Okay, so we know the clause, we know the independent clause, we know the dependent clause. So now we'll move on to the simple sentences. So simple sentence is made up of a single independent clause. So of course we know that independent clause stands alone, it forms a complete thought. So now the simple sentence, it is made up of single independent clause. Okay, so it's made up of a single independent clause. All right, so moving on. So Ben and I spent all day relaxing by the pool. That's an independent clause, so it's a simple sentence. And then next one is, some simple sentence have introductory phrases, but the introductory phrases is part of the predicates. So for example, it says, in the winter, Ben usually wears his heavy coat. But that introductory phrases, like it says, like the introductory part is added to the predicates. Okay. So the predicate is just like the ending of the sentence, what the subject is doing. So like it could be the verb or the action that the subject is doing. So you see, Ben as the subject, Ben usually wears his heavy coat in the winter. So wears his heavy coat in the winter is the predicate. Okay, so from here now, so from the wears his heavy coats, it's the predicate. So from this part now, so yeah, from where's. All right, so this all about simple sentence. So all you need to take note of is that the simple sentence is made up of a single independent clause, and yeah, that's it. Okay. And then the compound sentence. Compound sentence is made up of two independent clauses joined by a coordinating conjunction, such as and, but, or, so. Okay, so now a compound sentence is made up of two independent clauses. Again, we know that the independent clause, they could stand on their own, they form a complete thought, they make sense. Okay, so we know that the independent clause can stand on its own. So a compound sentence is two independent clauses joined by a coordinating conjunction. So the coordinating conjunction is just and, as, and, but, or, so. Okay, so that's it about the compound sentence and then the simple sentence. So moving on to the complex sentence. So complex sentence is made up of independent clause and dependent clause. So that's the difference. The complex sentence is made up of the independent and dependent, but the compound is made up of two independents. Okay. So the dependent clause is a complex sentence. In a complex sentence, usually begin in subordinating conjunction. So this is just like the same explanation we had for the last part, last test. Okay. So now we have complex sentence, and complex sentence has independent clause and dependent clause. So now the dependent clause in a complex sentence begins with a subordinating conjunction or a relative pronoun. So that's it. These are the subordinating conjunctions, these are the relative pronoun. So if you could take note of them, like I said from the other lesson, that's gonna help you a lot more. So just note that simple sentence is single independent clause for the simple sentence. And then for the compound sentence, it is independent, two independent clauses joined by conjunction and, but, or so. And then the complex sentence is independent clause and dependent clause. But then the dependent clause usually begin with the subordinating conjunctions or the relative pronoun. Okay? So that's basically everything. Hello Josh. So yeah, that's it. Okay. Um Now we'll move on to see some examples. If she ever gets the chance, Terry would love to visit the Egyptian pyramids. So during his trip to Italy, Tony visited the Trevi Fountain, which is in Rome. So now, if she ever gets the chance, if is what? If is an independent clause. If, because if is subordinating conjunction. So if she ever gets the chance, is a dependent clause here. So this beginning part here, okay. So this part now is the, so that part is actually the dependent clause, and then this part here from which is in Rome, this part from which is in Rome is dependent clause. All right. So lastly, we need to take note of the compound complex. All right. So compound complex. So what is the compound complex? Compound complex sentence is made up of two or more independent clauses and one or more dependent clauses. So compound complex now has lots. It has two or more dependent independent clause, or one or more dependent clause. Okay? So after Samantha left work, she stopped at the bank and then she went to the gym. So sometimes a dependent clause in a complex or compound complex sentence can interrupt an independent clause. So sometimes the independent clause could interrupt the independent clause. So the dependent clause sometimes could interrupt the independent clause. Okay? So that's it. All right, after she left work, after is in dependent clause. So she went to the gym could stand as an independent sentence because she went to the gym is a sentence on its own. She stopped at the bank is also a good sentence on its own. Okay. Orcas that kept in captivity often have bent dorsal fins. So yeah. All right, so I don't know. I hope that you really do get this. I hope so because a compound complex could get a little bit confusing, but you need to note that the compound complex sentence is made up of two or more independent clauses and one or more dependent clause. All right, so let's go through some examples. Which type of sentence is this? Since it takes approximately 1,000 years for a used printer cartridge to decompose, recycling these plastic ink dispensers helps the environment. Since it takes approximately 1,000 years for a used printer cartridge to decompose, recycling this plastic ink dispenser helps the environment. So, what kind of sentence is that? What kind of sentence? It's a complex sentence. So, why is it a complex sentence? Because it's made up of independent clause and a dependent clause. Okay, so now the dependent clause is the one that starts with the since, and then independent says recycling this plastic ink dispensers help the environment. So from recycling, you can leave that as a sentence on its own, and it's gonna be okay. Okay, so that's it. I hope that you get this clearly. And yeah, it won't be much of a problem for you to be able to answer your questions. So, which type of sentence is this? We can watch the presidential debate, which will be broadcast at 9 o'clock, or we can view the documentary about the greatest innovations of the 21st century. So, what type of sentence is this? Take notes, this sentence has the or here. And anyone that has the or is usually the compound sentence. So independence, independence, joined by a conjunction and a comma, like that. And the or there and the conjunction, the or there is the conjunction, and then there's a comma. So which makes this a compound sentence, compound complex. Okay. So yeah. All right. So let's see. Let's move on to the test now. Okay. So since it takes approx, okay, so this was complex because it was part of the tutorials. Yeah. Now as Pat sat down on the wicked old chair, it abruptly collapsed beneath him. So is this a simple sentence or compound sentence? If it was a compound sentence, it's gonna have a conjunction. Okay, so we don't have a conjunction here. Okay, it usually comes compound sentences comes with a conjunction and but or so, but we don't have that. We have it instead. So we're gonna click on the simple. So you see, it's a simple sentence. So take note that together compound, remember that the compound sent okay, just like this one. Students are unhappy with the new dress code requirement, and they will be discussing their grievances at the next school board meeting. And so there's a conjunction and a comma, which makes it a compound sentence. So if you don't see the conjunction and but or so, then you know that it's not a compound sentence. So you see that. Because most wild orchids naturally affix themselves to trees and branches, planting an orchid in soil will likely kill it. So is this simple or complex? So let's say that we get confused and we just choose anything. Okay, apparently the complex was correct. So after a parrotfish eats algae covered coral, the coral travels through the fish's digestive system and then it is decomposed in the reef as white coral sand. So this cannot only be a compound sentence because it has two independent sentences there. So it's going to be compound complex. Okay. Now, the vibrant trumpet-shaped blooms of the trumpet vine makes it ideal for attracting hummingbirds. So let's say that we're not certain and we just picked any one. I'm gonna give you all an example. So we just picked this compound because we're not certain of the answer. So it goes wrong and then you can just scroll down. So that's one thing you need to note. Once you get anything wrong, all you need to do is just scroll down. Okay? Go down below, you can see the explanation again, you can see the tutorials again, and all you can do is just click on it. Click on it like this, go through it, read again. So once you read again, then that's okay. You read again and then you can understand that okay, this is what is wrong, or this is the explanation, in case you don't remember the explanation anymore or you forgot it. Okay, Aaron has unconventional swing, but he manages to drive the ball farther than some professional golfers. So farther than some professional golfers. So simple or compound. Compound because we have but here, and but is word. But is a conjunction that is used to join compound sentences. As cold weather approaches, you must protect your water pipes against freezing, or they can rupture and cause significant damage to your home. Okay, so we have dependence, independence. Yeah, so it's gonna be complex, compound complex. Okay, Russia has a variety of natural resources, including oil, natural gas, timber, iron, or copper and lead. So is it gonna be simple or compound? So we just click on simple. So basically, this everything for the simple compound complex or compound complex. So I do hope that you understand this. And if ever you do not understand or you have some questions, you can as well just write them on the chat box, or you can read the tutorials again. As you can see, I have a 27 and a 20. That's because I didn't complete the test. So all you need to do is just complete the test, and you can have 100 or 98, and it's gonna show completed once you get to the last part. Okay, so I do hope that you understand and you do not have any other questions. So I guess that'll be all for today, and we will meet again next week, I guess. So do have a good evening and see you everyone. Bye. Take care all.